If you're like me, you've always wanted to grow your own potatoes, but thought you needed a huge garden. Well, I'm about to blow your mind. You can grow potatoes in buckets and you don't even need a backyard? Whether you live in an apartment, have a small balcony, or just a tiny patch of driveway, you can grow your own delicious homegrown potatoes. And the best part, it's easier than it sounds. In this video, I'm gonna walk you through everything you need to know to grow potatoes in buckets. I'll also share some pro tips to help you maximize your harvest, even if you're working with limited space. By the end of this video, you'll have all the knowledge and confidence to start your own bucket potato garden. So, let's get started. Before we dive into the how-to, let's talk about why growing potatoes in buckets is such a great idea. First, you don't need a big garden or even a backyard. You can grow potatoes on your balcony, porch, or even your driveway. All you need is a few buckets and some sunlight. Another big advantage is control. When you grow potatoes in buckets, you have complete control over the soil quality, water drainage, and even pests. This means you can create the perfect growing environment for your potatoes, which can lead to a bigger and healthier harvest. Plus, growing potatoes in buckets is a fantastic way to recycle old buckets you might have lying around. Instead of throwing them away, you can turn them into a mini potato farm. And if you're short on space, you can stack the buckets vertically or move them around to make the most of your available area. Finally, it's a fun and rewarding project. There's something incredibly satisfying about digging into a bucket and pulling out your very own homegrown potatoes. It's a feeling that never gets old. Now let's talk about what you'll need to get started. Don't worry, the list is short and simple. Here's what you'll need. Buckets, you'll need large buckets, around 10 to 15 gallons in size. You can use old paint buckets, food-grade containers, or even buy new ones from a hardware store. Just make sure they're clean and have never held toxic materials. Soil. Potatoes need well-draining soil to grow well. You can use a mix of garden soil and compost, or buy a high-quality potting mix from a garden center. Seed potatoes, don't use regular potatoes from the grocery store, they can carry diseases. Instead, get certified seed potatoes from a garden center or online. These are specifically grown to be disease-free and will give you the best results. Sunlight. Choose a spot that gets at least 6 hours of sunlight a day. Potatoes love the sun, so the more sunlight they get, the better they'll grow. Tools. You'll need a drill to make holes in the buckets for drainage and a watering can or hose to keep your plants hydrated. That's it. With just these few items, you're ready to start growing potatoes in buckets. The first step is to prepare your buckets. Start by drilling a few holes in the bottom of each bucket. These holes are super important because they allow excess water to drain out. Potatoes don't like sitting in waterlogged soil. It can cause the roots to rot and kill your plants. So, make sure your buckets have good drainage. Once you've drilled the holes, add a few inches of soil to the bottom of the bucket. This will give your potatoes a good base to grow in. You can use a mix of garden soil and compost or a high-quality potting mix. Just make sure the soil is loose and well draining. Now, your buckets are ready for planting. Next, it's time to plant your seed potatoes. Start by cutting your seed potatoes into chunks. Each chunk should have at least one eye. That's the spot where the potato will sprout. If your seed potatoes are small, you can plant them whole. Place the chunks on top of the soil in your bucket, spacing them out evenly. You can plant about 3 to 4 chunks per bucket, depending on the size of the bucket. Once the chunks are in place, cover them with a few inches of soil. That's it! Your potatoes are planted! Now, all you need to do is water them and wait for them to grow. As your potato plants grow, you'll need to hill them. Hilling means adding more soil to the bucket as the plants get taller. This encourages more potatoes to grow along the stem, which means a bigger harvest for you. When your plants are about 6 inches tall, add a few more inches of soil to the bucket, covering the lower part of the stems. Repeat this process every few weeks until the bucket is almost full of soil. Leave just enough space for the plant to grow above the soil. Hilling also protects the developing potatoes from sunlight, which can turn them green and make them inedible. So, don't skip this step. It's key to a successful harvest. Potatoes are pretty low maintenance, but they do need some care to grow well. Here are a few tips. Sunlight. Make sure your buckets are in a sunny spot. Potatoes love the sun, so the more sunlight they get, the better they'll grow. Watering. Water your potatoes regularly, but don't overdo it. Too much water can cause the roots to rot. A good rule is to keep the soil moist but not soggy. You can check the soil by sticking your finger about an inch into it. If it feels dry, it's time to water. If it feels damp, wait another day or two. Fertilizing. Potatoes need a lot of nutrients to grow well. Use a balanced fertilizer, like a 10-10-10 formula, or one made for vegetables. Apply it once or twice during the growing season, following the instructions on the package. Pests. Keep an eye out for pests like aphids or beetles. If you spot any, use natural solutions like neem oil. Mix a few drops of neem oil with water in a spray bottle and apply it to the leaves. This will help keep pests away without using harsh chemicals. You'll know your potatoes are ready to harvest when the plants start to turn yellow and die off. This means the potatoes have stopped growing. To harvest, gently tip the bucket over and dig through the soil. You'll find a bunch of potatoes waiting for you. Be careful when pulling them out. Potatoes are delicate and you don't want to bruise them. Once harvested, let the potatoes dry in a cool, dark place for a few hours before storing them. This will help them last longer and prevent them from spoiling. And that's it. Growing potatoes in buckets is super simple, and it's a great way to enjoy fresh, homegrown potatoes, even if you don't have a garden. With just a few buckets, you can produce enough potatoes to feed your family for weeks. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below telling me about your potato growing adventures. Have you ever tried growing potatoes in containers? Let me know how it went. Happy gardening!